So probably the most famous of all 427 Cobras is the SC car. And a lot of people don't understand the whole story behind the SC car. So let's start at the beginning. Obviously the 289 Cobras, super successful, but they know they're gonna have their asses handed to them shortly because the Grand Sports came out in Bahamas in '63 and just made mincemeat of the 289 Cobras. That's when Ken Miles and Remington decide to build the flip top. 2196. It's actually a 289 Cobra, but they stuff a 427 in it. They don't get the original 390 they were promised right away. They'll get it a little later, but they don't get it right away. They realize car doesn't handle so good with an extra couple 100 pounds in the front, but it has huge horsepower. There's tons of potential. They know they're gonna make this thing work. Eventually, the flip top gets turned into basically a Daytona coupe chassis with that 390 motor. And then again, it's a 1,600 pound car with 500 horsepower. They go back to Bahamas in '64 and they destroy the Grand Sports. It's way quicker than the Grand Sports. Now they realize, well, we've got a winner here, but the problem is this is a one-off car. We can't build 100 of these to go racing. So they go back to AC Cars and say, hey, we want to stuff a big block into one of these Cobras. What can we do? And they said, well, we'll make the chassis tubes a little bit wider apart. We'll go 4-inch tubes instead of 3-inch tubes. We'll go to a coilover system instead of the leaf spring system. We can make this really work. We'll make the chassis a little bit more rigid, but we'll still make it at roughly the same price. The body's got to be a little bit wider. Everything's got to be a little bit wider for the engine. And then of course, you're going to want a bigger tire. So the idea is they bring back a couple of cars, 3002, they start testing that car. It's fast, it does everything it's supposed to. They say, okay, let's go FIA racing, but we need to homologate this. We're gonna do 100 cars. So they say they're gonna build 100 competition cars. Well, when the time comes, only 51 or 2 cars actually got shipped to Shelby American. They did not get enough built, so forget FIA. So the dream of running these cars in Europe as a competitive team is over. Not to mention the GT40 program's really starting at this time too. So the competition cars, there's 50 some odd cars sitting at the LA airport, and they're in bare aluminum. They're sitting there, no motors in them. The first year they only sell about 17 cars to racers. They don't have Shelby at the racetrack supporting them. They don't have Shelby at the racetrack winning everything. So now it's purely up to the independents to carry the torch for Shelby. Well, with 17 out of 50 cars sold, this doesn't look like a winner. That's when Charles Beadler, who's a sales rep for Shelby on the Eastern Seaboard, and he's the kind of fixer guy. You know, if one dealer has a car and another dealer has a customer for it right away, he'll move that car over to this dealer, he'll order the new one for the old dealer, make sure it's painted the same color so nobody's out. So he's a guy that's got some ideas. He keeps the flow of street cars just rolling along. Well, he comes back to LA at the airport. He sees all these aluminum bodied competition cars. They don't even have wheels on them because there was a shortage of the magnesium wheels. And he says, what are you guys doing with these? And they go, we can't sell them. So he says, well, why don't we turn the ultimate car into the super ultimate car, because basically we have full-on competition Cobras, let's make them street legal. And that's what he did with the SC car. And some guys call them semi-comp cars, some guys call them street competition cars, whatever you want to call them. They were the baddest of all the Cobras ever built that was street legal. The competition cars were not street cars. So what they did is they took full-on competition cars and they made them street legal. So the only real difference between a full-on comp car and the SC cars is a minor detuning. Let me show you what we're talking about. So the full-on competition cars, as far as engines went, came with a 427 high riser side oiler. Bigger compression, 12 and change compression. So for the road cars, they said, we're gonna do a 427 side oiler medium riser, which actually gave you a little bit more torque on the bottom end and actually made for a better street car, but also made for pretty good road race cars, as half of the SC cars ended up at the track. They were a tiny bit less money. Part of the reason for that is they knew they couldn't sell them at 10,000 plus that the competition cars were. So they said, let's reduce the price a little. We'll call it $8,500 and try to get rid of it. So what happened is a lot of the racers said, they're the exact same car, they're $1,500 less. I'm gonna order the SC car and race it. It's just as quick as the full comp car. The intake is a little bit different too. So on the full competition cars, you had the turkey pan. On the SC cars, you had the 2.4 barrels, which is really cool because to get a medium riser 2.4 barrel, this is the only car that was ever really a medium riser with 2.4s on it. They came with 10.4 compression, so still streetable, lots of horsepower, lots of torque. They had all of the goodies that the race cars had because they were a full-on race car. So let's do a comparison between a full comp car and an SC car as far as everything else goes. So let's start at the body mods. The most obvious, the hood scoop. Both the SCs and the comp cars had the hood scoops riveted on and also had the front of the hood riveted on so it wouldn't start peeling apart. They didn't come with any bumpers. They didn't come with a splitter in the front. They all came with oil coolers and they all came with the quick jacks. That's something both of those cars all came with. Then you go to the wheels. What's interesting about the wheels is the SC cars actually came with wider wheels. They were 7.5s and 9.5s compared to the 6.5s and 8.5s. They were actually more rubber on the road. The flares are the same in the front. The flares in the back are a little bit different. And what they did is they turned up the wheel lip here on just the SC cars to give them a little bit more clearance for road use, potholes, things like that. You're not on a smooth surface. Mind you, I've seen plenty of pictures where the Cobra guys are off-roading and they could have used this as they got tore up. All of the SC cars and all of the comp cars came with the famous side pipes. Now the SC cars had tiny little mufflers put in to make them street legal. The comp cars had no mufflers in it. Still a really good sounding car, but none of the road cars really ever came with side exhaust. That's something that a lot of guys added later. When you come to the back of the car, you have this famous Le Mans cap. It's a 42-gallon aluminum tank, exact same tank on both cars. That's a long distance tank. Then you go to the roll bar. All of the SC cars and all of the comp cars had this roll bar, and very few road cars, there's maybe one or two that actually came with a roll bar. The interior, no glove box door. It's a little bit lighter. It's got the gauges configured a little bit differently. Seats and everything is roughly the same, except the seats are made out of Naugahyde. They're not made out of leather. These are an original set of Naugahyde seats. There was no door pockets like the road cars on either the SC cars or the competition cars, so there's no pockets here, again for weight. Now, if the guy in here weighs 200 pounds, where would you put the battery? Well, you put it on the passenger side, and that's exactly what they did. They used aircraft batteries, the Rayobat batteries, put them behind the passenger seat to try and offset the weight from the driver. Again, from a handling point of view, that was great. Go around the back of the car, you have no rear bumper again, no extra weight, you just have the quick jacks. And inside, none of the aluminum was painted because they came in bare aluminum. You can see where the roll bar extends to, and then you have the two Stewart Warner pumps. Both comp cars and SC cars came with those famous Stewart Warner pumps. Then you go to all of the trick stuff. You had the cooler underneath the car, you had all the brake ducts front and rear for the competition cars. Again, exactly the same for both cars. Same rear end gear in the comp car and the SC car, same transmission in the comp car and the SC car. So really there is zero difference. The suspension's the same as well. You could either get the optional Coney or you had the original Armstrong shocks on either one. They came with the solid bushing, so the ride is a little bit rougher than on a road car, but again, between the two, there's zero difference. The SC car is probably the most copied car on the planet. It's the coolest looking. It's got the hood scoop, the roll bars, the pipes, the cool Le Mans cap. It's got a 2.4 barrel, 427 medium riser. Everybody thinks every Cobra came with a 427 medium riser side oiler. Very few actually did. This is the car that did. So how many of these cars were built? Well, keep in mind, 51 were produced originally. About 21 or 2 or 3 were competition cars, 29 are SC cars, and really it didn't matter if the guy raced the car or didn't race the car. It was purely how the car was sold is what delineates the two. The cars all started life as competition cars, but if you got an invoice that said an SC car, that's what it is. If you got an invoice that said competition car, that's what it is. Both were raced, Both were super successful, it just depended who the owner was. But the SC car is the car that everybody knows about because of the wheels, the little flares in the back, and all of those famous items. So let's have a look at this car specifically. So what's great about this car, it's one of those cars that was never raced. It's never been damaged, it's never been hurt. It's had great owners from day one. There's a continuous history from the start, and it's never put a foot wrong. It's got its original motor, the 427 medium riser. It's got original tranny, it's got its original rear end. It's 100% its original body and its original chassis. It still has its original seats. It's a 26,000 mile car that's only been road driven, hasn't really ever seen any competition use, and it's one of the few virgin SC cars out there. Then the car got a complete restoration. We put it back to its original colors. The sapphire blue is just one of the prettiest colors on a 427 car. It just suits the car. If you look at the wheels, people are saying, why do you have that gold tinge? Well, all of the Hala brands, all of the magnesium wheels had a Dow 7 coating put on them from Hala brand. Now that coating would wear off, but if you look at some of the old original pictures, you can see this gold tinge on a lot of those wheels. That's that Dow 7 coating. We were able to duplicate that. All the SC cars and all the competition cars came with the Goodyear tires. They actually came with blue dots on the front and in the spare and Goodyear tires on the rear, but everybody just went Goodyears all the way around after they started driving them a little bit. So Gary's gonna take this thing for a rip. I think he's gonna be pleasantly surprised. He's driven lots of road 427 Cobras, but this is really the first 427 SC car that he's been really getting on.
I don't know why my dad agrees to the format of these videos, but I'm not complaining. He gives you all the information, and now I get to do the fun part. I get to go drive this thing. My goodness. I think this is the first SC car that I've ever driven on the street. You know, what is essentially a full comp car. I guess the only real difference is being the two 4-barrels and the muffler. But other than that, this is a Shelby race prepped race car. Lucky enough to be able to purchase one of these things in the 60s, it was a guarantee that you were driving the baddest car on the street. And with only 29 built, you were probably driving one of the rarest cars on the street as well. But driving this car, it's absolute perfection. Shifts every gear, I mean, big disc brakes, the car stops. Again, it's fully a race car. And you get into the power, and it's almost frightening. At probably over 500 horsepower, right around 2,000 pounds the car weighs. Power to weight ratio, again, is frightening. And the sound, I mean, really not much of a muffler on this car. These cars sound unbelievable. Nice about these cars is they were built to live. You know, big fuel pump, big rear end cooler. Pretty hard to hurt a car like this. So the old story goes, Shelby would put $100 on the passenger dash, take someone out for a drive. I forget if it was, you know, reporters or someone he was going to sell the car to. Obviously, he's quite the salesman. You note, and he'd leave the line, and if the passenger could grab the $100 off the dash, they could have it. Again, is it true? I don't know. You know, I always doubted it anyways. But after driving one of these cars, it very well could be true. What a treat. What an afternoon getting to drive the ultimate Cobra.
To me, this was the ultimate supercar in the day, and I think Gary will agree. It's super fast, it's a great looking car, great sounding car. It's what a supercar should be all about. So let's talk about values. Well, the competition cars and the SC cars are roughly the same build. You can call it 29 and 23. They're basically the identical car, but one was street legal and one wasn't. They made around the same horsepower. They had a little bit different engine spec, but actually the medium riser probably worked better under 5,000 or 6,000 RPM than the high riser, so it's debatable which one would have been quicker at the track. As far as values go, they're roughly the same. It all comes down to quality of the restoration and history of the car. Some of the competition cars, none of them were really team cars other than 2196 and 3002. Those are the most significant, most valuable. The rest were all independent race cars, so you can't give them that team value, but they do have some cool history of those. As far as the rest of the cars, they're roughly the same. One had just sold that we had restored for about $4.2 million. So the best of the best seems to be landing in around there. And then you have the cars that have had bad histories and cars that have had issues, which is a lot of these cars, and they go anywhere from $2 to $3 million. But the top of the pile is about $4 million today or close to it. So this is one of the most original, complete SC cars that has a great history from day one. It is the Cobra that everybody's looking for.